You're nothing but a worthless college dropout. Don't ever show your face at this house again." Those were my mother's final words before she slammed the door in my face. I stood there on the front porch of the house where I'd spent my entire childhood, my single suitcase sitting at my feet. Through the living room window, I could see my younger sister, Victoria, laughing with our parents. That was 5 years ago. I was 22 years old then. My name is Elena, and I'm 27 now. Back then, I was the family disgrace. The daughter who didn't measure up, who was too plain, too ordinary, too much of a failure to deserve their love or respect. My sister Victoria was everything I wasn't: stunning, brilliant, ambitious, and most importantly, their golden child. Growing up in Phoenix, Arizona, I learned early that love in my family came with conditions. My parents, both successful real estate developers, had very specific expectations for their daughters. We were supposed to be beautiful, accomplished, and perfect reflections of their wealth and status. Victoria fit that mold effortlessly. I never did. I remember the exact moment everything shattered. I was in my junior year at Arizona State University, studying graphic design. I absolutely loved it. Creating visual stories, working with color theory and typography, bringing concepts to life through design. But my parents despised my choice. They wanted me in business school or law school, something they could brag about at their exclusive country club. "Graphic design is for people who can't handle real careers," my father said when I declared my major. "You're wasting our money on this garbage." My mother was even crueler. She never missed an opportunity to compare me to Victoria, who was studying pre-med at the time. "Your sister is going to be a surgeon." "What are you going to be? Someone who makes posters?" The constant criticism wore me down like water eroding stone. Every phone call home became an interrogation about my grades, my appearance, my future. Every holiday visit turned into a marathon lecture about my poor choices and disappointing trajectory. They made it abundantly clear that I was their failure. When I began struggling with severe depression and anxiety, they told me to stop being so dramatic and attention-seeking. When my grades started slipping because I could barely get out of bed, they threatened to cut off my tuition payments immediately. I tried desperately to push through the darkness, but the pressure became absolutely unbearable. My mental health spiraled downward. I stopped attending classes altogether. I stopped eating regular meals. I stopped believing I had any value whatsoever. Then one particularly dark October night, I made the devastating decision to leave college entirely. Not because I wanted to give up my dreams, but because I genuinely couldn't see any path forward that didn't end in complete breakdown. When I finally told my parents over Thanksgiving break, the explosion was immediate and volcanic. My mother screamed at me for what felt like hours about how I had humiliated them, how I was throwing away every opportunity they'd given me, how I was too stupid and weak to understand what a catastrophic mistake I was making. My father just stared at me with pure disgust and said coldly, "You're no longer my daughter. You're nothing to this family." Victoria stood in the hallway watching the entire scene with a barely concealed smirk on her face. She had always enjoyed watching me fail. It made her shine even brighter by comparison. They gave me exactly 1 week to pack my belongings and get out. No financial support, no place to stay, no safety net whatsoever. I was completely on my own at 22 years old, and I was absolutely terrified. I spent the next few months couch surfing at friends' apartments, working whatever jobs I could scrape together to survive. I waited tables, worked retail at the mall, cleaned office buildings at 3 in the morning, anything to keep myself fed and housed. I felt like I had hit absolute rock bottom with no ladder in sight. But something fundamental shifted inside me during those brutal months. Maybe it was anger finally breaking through the depression. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was just stubborn survival instinct. But I decided I wasn't going to let them define my worth anymore. I wasn't going to accept their version of who I was supposed to be. I took every single dollar I earned and saved it religiously. I taught myself advanced design software using free YouTube tutorials and online resources. I built a portfolio of work during every spare moment between my 3 jobs. I reached out to small local businesses and offered to design their logos and websites for almost nothing. just to build real-world experience. And slowly, painfully slowly, I started building something real. It wasn't easy. There were nights I went to bed hungry because I had to choose between buying food and paying for internet access. There were moments when I wanted to quit entirely, when the voice in my head that sounded exactly like my mother told me I was delusional to think I could succeed without their money and connections. But I kept going. And gradually, things started changing. My design work improved dramatically. My clients got bigger and more prestigious. My rates increased. I moved from sleeping on couches to renting a tiny studio apartment. Then from that studio to a modest one-bedroom. Then from freelancing alone to starting my own small design agency. 5 years passed. 5 years of working myself to complete exhaustion, of proving everyone wrong, of becoming someone I could genuinely be proud of. I had cut off all contact with my family, changed my phone number twice, moved to a completely different part of Phoenix. I wanted absolutely nothing to do with them anymore. They were dead to me, and I was dead to them. Then one warm April evening, I received a message on Instagram from an old high school friend named Melissa. She was inviting me to Victoria's medical school graduation party. My sister was finally finishing her degree at the University of Arizona, and apparently the whole family was throwing an absolutely massive celebration at one of the most exclusive venues in downtown Phoenix. The invitation felt like a trap. Why would they possibly want me there after everything that had happened? After they'd thrown me away like garbage? But as I sat there staring at the message on my phone screen, I felt something shift deep inside me. Maybe it was time to face them again. Not as the broken, desperate girl they had discarded, but as the successful woman I had become entirely without their help. I spent the entire next week agonizing over whether to attend. Part of me wanted to ignore the invitation completely, to keep living my good life without them poisoning it. I had built something genuinely impressive without their support or approval. Why risk going back into that toxic environment now? But another part of me, the part that still carried deep scars from their rejection, wanted them to see exactly what I had accomplished. I wanted them to know I had not just survived without them, but actually thrived. The party was scheduled for Saturday evening at the Pinnacle Event Center, one of Phoenix's most expensive and prestigious venues. I knew my parents would spare absolutely no expense for Victoria's big celebration. They loved showing off their wealth and success, loved proving to everyone in their social circle how perfect their family appeared. I decided to go. Not because I wanted their approval anymore. I was long past needing that. Not because I hoped for some tearful emotional reunion. I went because I wanted to look them directly in the eye as an equal and show them exactly what they had thrown away when they abandoned me. The days leading up to the party were strange and emotionally turbulent. I found myself thinking about my childhood more than I had in years. Memories I had tried desperately to bury kept surfacing unbidden. I remembered being 7 years old, proudly bringing home a drawing I had made in art class. My teacher had praised it enthusiastically, displayed it prominently on the classroom wall, told me I had genuine artistic talent. My mother barely glanced at it before telling me to go do my math homework. My father didn't even look up from his laptop. I remembered being 12, overhearing my mother on the phone with her sister, complaining bitterly about how I wasn't developing as attractively as Victoria, how I was going to be the plain daughter, how she desperately hoped I would at least be intelligent enough to compensate for my lack of beauty. I remembered being 15, winning first place in a regional design competition at school, rushing home bursting with excitement to share the news. My parents barely acknowledged it, because Victoria had just been accepted into the National Honor Society. Every single memory reinforced the same crushing message. I wasn't enough. I would never be enough. Not for them, but now, sitting in my comfortable apartment that I had paid for entirely with my own hard-earned money, surrounded by the tangible success I had built from absolutely nothing, I realized something profoundly important. Their opinion didn't matter anymore. I had proven myself to the only person who actually counted, myself. Saturday evening arrived. I spent hours getting ready. not because I was trying to impress anyone, but because I wanted to feel absolutely confident and powerful. I wore an elegant black dress that I had saved up specifically for this occasion. I did my makeup carefully and professionally. I styled my hair perfectly. When I looked in the mirror, I saw someone strong and successful looking back at me. Someone who had survived hell and come out stronger. The venue was even more extravagant than I had imagined possible. Massive crystal chandeliers hung from the soaring ceiling. Elaborate white floral arrangements decorated every available surface. A professional string quartet played elegant classical music in one corner. Servers in pristine uniforms circulated throughout the crowd with champagne and elaborate appetizers. It was exactly the kind of excessive, status-focused display my parents absolutely lived for. I arrived deliberately late, which gave me a crucial moment to observe the scene before anyone noticed my presence. The enormous room was absolutely packed with people. I recognized many of them from my childhood. Extended family members, longtime family friends, my parents' business associates and country club companions. Everyone was impeccably dressed. Everyone was smiling and chatting animatedly. Everyone was there to celebrate Victoria's massive achievement. My sister stood at the very center of the room in a stunning white designer dress, looking every bit the accomplished medical school graduate. She was laughing at something someone had said, her perfectly manicured hand resting on the arm of an extremely handsome man I didn't recognize. Probably her boyfriend or fiancé. My parents flanked her protectively on either side, absolutely beaming with pride and satisfaction. I felt that familiar tightness grip my chest as I watched the perfect family tableau. That was supposed to be me. I was supposed to be the one making them proud. But I had failed to meet their impossible expectations, and they had discarded me without a second thought. I took a deep, steadying breath and stepped further into the crowded room. Several people glanced in my direction, but absolutely no one seemed to recognize me. I had changed dramatically in 5 years. I was significantly thinner now, more polished and put together, and I carried myself with a confidence I had never possessed before. The scared, depressed college dropout was completely gone. In her place stood someone who had learned not just to survive, but to genuinely thrive. I made my way to the elegant bar and ordered a glass of white wine. As I waited, I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Elena, is that really you?" I turned to find Professor Morrison, one of my absolute favorite instructors from my college days. He had taught in the visual arts department, one of the very few people who had genuinely encouraged my design work before I dropped out. He looked noticeably older now, with more gray in his hair and deeper lines around his eyes, but his kind, intelligent eyes were exactly the same. "Professor Morrison," I said, genuinely surprised to see him. "What are you doing here?" "I teach at the medical school now," he explained warmly. "Victoria was actually one of my students for a humanities elective. Brilliant young woman, extremely driven and focused." He paused, studying my face carefully. "I heard you left ASU. I always wondered what happened to you. You had such remarkable talent." His words hit me much harder than I had expected. Here was someone who had believed in me, who had recognized real potential in my work, and I had simply disappeared from his life without any explanation. "I had some serious personal issues I needed to deal with," I said carefully, choosing my words. "But I'm doing very well now. I actually own my own design agency here in Phoenix." His weathered face absolutely lit up with genuine pleasure. "Really? That's absolutely wonderful, Elena. I always knew you had exceptional ability. Your work was always outstanding, even back in those early classes." We talked for several more minutes, catching up on the years that had passed. He seemed sincerely happy to see me doing well, which was honestly more than I could say for most people in this room of so-called family and friends. As our conversation naturally wound down, Professor Morrison excused himself to speak with other guests. I watched him disappear into the crowd, feeling simultaneously grateful for his kindness and acutely aware of how isolated and alone I felt, surrounded by all these people who were supposedly my family. I moved through the elaborate party like an invisible ghost. People looked directly at me, their eyes passing over my face without any spark of recognition. 5 years was apparently a very long time. I had been 22 when they last saw me, young, broken, defeated. Now I was 27, polished, successful, and radiating confidence. They couldn't make the connection. I found myself standing near the elaborate dessert table when I clearly heard my mother's distinctive voice. She was holding court with a group of well-dressed women, all of them wearing expensive jewelry and practiced social smiles. "We're just so incredibly proud of Victoria," my mother was saying in her refined voice. Medical school was extremely challenging, of course, but she never wavered from her goal for even a moment. She's always been so determined and focused, unlike some people. The pointed way she said those last words made it crystal clear she was talking about me, even though she didn't say my name. I felt familiar anger flare hot and sharp in my chest. "Yes, we're very fortunate," my father chimed in smoothly, joining the conversation with his characteristic charm. "Both of our daughters have done exceptionally well for themselves. Victoria is going to be a surgeon, and our eldest daughter, Elena, is very successful in the business world. We're proud of both our girls." I froze completely, my wine glass halfway to my lips. What was he possibly talking about? They had completely disowned me. They had explicitly told me I was nothing to them. And now they were casually lying to their friends, pretending everything was perfectly fine, pretending they were proud of me. One of the elegant women in the group asked with genuine curiosity, "Oh, I didn't know you had another daughter. Where is she tonight? I'd love to meet her." My mother's practiced smile became noticeably strained. "She couldn't make it this evening. Important work commitments overseas. You know how demanding these international business careers can be." The lie rolled off her tongue so casually, so smoothly practiced that I found myself wondering how many times they had told this exact story. How many times had they pretended I was still part of their perfect family, still part of their carefully crafted image, when the reality was that they had thrown me away like worthless garbage 5 years ago. I wanted desperately to march over there and expose them right then and there. I wanted to announce loudly to everyone that I was the daughter they were lying about, that they had viciously cut me off and completely abandoned me, that their perfect family image was nothing but an elaborate facade built on cruelty and lies. But something stopped me. Maybe it was self-preservation and strategic thinking. Maybe it was curiosity about how far their deception went. Or maybe I just wanted to see how deep their lies ran before I revealed the devastating truth. I decided to observe more carefully, to gather information, to understand exactly what elaborate story they had been selling to their entire social circle about their successful eldest daughter. I moved strategically to different parts of the crowded room, listening carefully to various conversations, picking up revealing pieces of the fictional narrative my parents had so carefully constructed about me. It became abundantly clear that they had told their friends and associates I was working abroad in Europe, that I was far too busy with my incredibly successful international career to attend family events in person, that I regularly sent my regards and love but simply couldn't be there physically. They had created an entire elaborate fiction where I was still their accomplished, globe-trotting daughter, just conveniently absent from their actual lives. The realization made me feel physically sick. They desperately wanted all the social credit for raising 2 successful daughters without having to actually deal with me or acknowledge what they had done. They wanted to maintain their perfect public image without ever acknowledging that they had completely destroyed their relationship with one of their own children. As I was processing this sickening discovery, Victoria walked directly past me. She was heading toward a group of young, attractive people near the entrance, likely her medical school friends and colleagues. She glanced at me very briefly, her eyes sliding over my face without even the slightest flicker of recognition, and kept walking. My own sister, the person I had grown up with, shared a house with for 18 years, fought with, occasionally laughed with, didn't recognize me at all. I was completely invisible to her now. I followed at a careful distance, genuinely curious to hear what she might be saying to her friends about our family. They were all enthusiastically congratulating her, discussing their future medical careers, sharing amusing stories from their grueling medical school experience. "Your family must be so proud of you," one of her friends said warmly. Victoria laughed, her voice bright and carefree. "They absolutely are. My parents have always been incredibly supportive of my goals. They've pushed me to be my absolute best." Another friend asked casually, "Do you have any siblings?" "I have an older sister," Victoria said, and I noticed her voice became more careful. "But we're not close at all. She made some really bad choices several years ago, and we don't really communicate anymore." Bad choices. That's how she so casually described my mental breakdown, my crippling depression, my desperate struggle just to survive. Just bad choices. "That's really sad," her friend said with what sounded like genuine sympathy. Victoria shrugged dismissively. "Some people just can't handle pressure and expectations. My parents did absolutely everything they possibly could for her, gave her every advantage, but she just threw it all away. She dropped out of college and basically disappeared completely. We honestly have no idea what she's even doing now or where she is." The casual cruelty of her words stung far more than I had expected. She talked about me like I was a complete stranger. Like my struggles and pain meant absolutely nothing. Like the years of systematic emotional abuse from our parents had been entirely my fault and my weakness. I wanted desperately to confront her right there. I wanted to tell her in excruciating detail exactly what I had been doing for the past 5 years. I wanted to shove my considerable success directly in her smug face and watch her realize she had been completely wrong about me. But I held myself back with enormous effort. The evening was still relatively young. There would be time for dramatic revelations later. I needed to be strategic about this. I moved away from Victoria's group and found myself in a quieter corner of the massive room. Professor Morrison appeared again, this time accompanied by a distinguished-looking middle-aged man in an expensive tailored suit. "Elena," Professor Morrison said with genuine warmth, "I really want you to meet someone important. This is Dr. Patterson, the dean of the medical school. I was just telling him all about your design agency and your impressive work." Dr. Patterson extended his hand professionally, and I shook it firmly. "It's a pleasure to meet you. Professor Morrison speaks extremely highly of your design capabilities and business acumen." "Thank you very much," I said, somewhat surprised by the professor's enthusiastic advocacy on my behalf. "Actually," Dr. Patterson continued thoughtfully, "we've been actively looking for someone talented to completely redesign our medical school's website and all our branding materials. Our current design is frankly quite outdated and doesn't reflect the caliber of our institution. Would you potentially be interested in discussing a contract for this project?" My heart absolutely skipped a beat. This was a genuinely major opportunity, exactly the kind of prestigious, high-profile client that could take my small agency to a completely new level. And it was happening right here at my sister's graduation party, while my family stood across the room pretending I didn't even exist. "I would definitely be very interested in discussing that," I said, keeping my voice carefully professional despite my racing pulse. We exchanged business cards and contact information, and Dr. Patterson promised to reach out early the following week to schedule a formal meeting to discuss the project scope and requirements. As he walked away to mingle with other guests, Professor Morrison smiled knowingly at me. "Opportunities often come when we least expect them," he said gently. I nodded, but my mind was absolutely spinning with possibilities. The night had taken a completely unexpected turn, and I had a strong feeling things were about to get very interesting indeed. After Dr. Patterson left, I politely excused myself from Professor Morrison and stepped outside onto the spacious terrace. I desperately needed fresh air and space to process everything that was happening. The cool desert night breeze felt wonderful against my flushed skin. The terrace overlooked downtown Phoenix, with the city lights twinkling beautifully in the distance against the dark sky. I leaned against the stone railing and closed my eyes, trying to calm the absolute storm of conflicting emotions churning inside me. Anger, satisfaction, confusion, vindication. They all swirled together until I couldn't distinguish which feeling was strongest. I heard careful footsteps behind me, and turned to find an elegant woman I didn't recognize at all. She appeared to be in her mid-50s, with perfectly styled silver hair and an expensive navy blue dress. She smiled warmly at me. "Needed a break from the crowd?" she asked pleasantly, moving to stand beside me at the railing. "Something like that," I replied cautiously. "I'm Helen," she introduced herself. "I'm a longtime colleague of Victoria's father. We've worked together on numerous real estate projects for many years now. My father's business colleague." I kept my expression carefully neutral. "Nice to meet you." "You look very familiar," Helen said, studying my face with obvious curiosity. "Have we met before somewhere? Perhaps at another event?" "I don't think so," I said carefully. She tilted her head, still examining me closely. "No, I'm absolutely certain I've seen you somewhere before. Maybe in family photos." Then her eyes suddenly widened with recognition. "Oh my goodness. Are you Elena?" My stomach dropped sickeningly. So someone had finally recognized me after all. "Yes," I said quietly. Helen's face immediately transformed with genuine warmth and enthusiasm. "I've heard so much about you over the years. Your parents mentioned you're doing extremely well in international business. They said you're working overseas in Europe right now, but I'm so glad you could make it home for tonight. Victoria must be absolutely thrilled to have her older sister here for such an important occasion." The elaborate lies my parents had been telling were even more extensive than I had initially realized. I didn't bother to correct Helen's misconceptions. Instead, I just smiled politely and let her continue talking. "Your father actually showed me some photos of your design work last month," Helen went on enthusiastically. "Absolutely beautiful, sophisticated work. He was so obviously proud. He actually keeps an entire portfolio of your projects in his downtown office. He shows it to clients sometimes. This was genuinely too much to process. My father, the same man who had called my career choice completely worthless and told me I was no longer his daughter, supposedly kept a portfolio of my work in his office and showed it to his business clients." "That's quite surprising to hear," I said, unable to completely keep the sharp edge out of my voice. Helen didn't seem to notice my tone at all. "Oh, he talks about you all the time to anyone who will listen. Both his daughters are so remarkably accomplished. You must have absolutely wonderful, supportive parents to have raised such successful children." I felt physically sick. They were systematically taking credit for my success. Success I had achieved entirely without them, despite them, after they had completely abandoned me. They were using my hard-won accomplishments to enhance their own social reputation, while simultaneously pretending I was too busy with my glamorous international career to attend family events. "Excuse me," I said abruptly, my hands actually shaking with rage. "I need to find the restroom." I left Helen standing alone on the terrace and went back inside the venue, my entire body trembling with barely controlled fury. I needed to confront them immediately. I needed to expose all their lies right now, right here, in front of all their friends and colleagues and business associates. I needed everyone to know the truth about what kind of people they really were. But as I looked around the crowded room, I saw my parents surrounded by admiring friends. I saw Victoria absolutely glowing in her spotlight moment. I saw the seemingly perfect picture they had so carefully created and maintained. And I suddenly realized that confronting them publicly right now would likely make me look bitter. Petty, jealous, unstable, exactly the problem child they had always claimed I was. They would easily spin it as me being envious of Victoria's success, being mentally unstable, being the same failure and disappointment I had always been in their narrative. I needed to be much smarter and more strategic than that. I needed concrete evidence. I needed a way to expose them that couldn't possibly be dismissed or explained away or twisted to make me look like the villain. I pulled out my phone and started quietly recording detailed voice memos, carefully documenting everything I was witnessing and overhearing. The specific lies people were telling me about how proud my parents supposedly were of me. The way my family was pretending I was still an active part of their lives. The elaborate, detailed fiction they had constructed about my glamorous overseas career. As I was doing this careful documentation, I saw Victoria break away from her group of friends and head toward the hallway that led to the private conference rooms. I followed her at a discreet distance, my journalist instincts fully activated. She entered one of the smaller private conference rooms off the main corridor. I waited a careful moment, then pushed the door open very slightly, just enough to hear clearly. Victoria was on her phone, her back to the door where I stood hidden. "I know, Mom," she was saying into her phone. "I'm handling it perfectly. No one has asked about her specifically at all. Everyone completely believes the story about her working overseas in Europe." She paused, clearly listening to my mother on the other end. "What if she somehow shows up? Mom, she doesn't even know about the party. We deliberately didn't invite her to anything. Even if she somehow found out, she definitely wouldn't have the courage to actually come back here after 5 whole years." My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. They were actively, explicitly discussing their efforts to keep me away and exclude me. This wasn't just casual social lying to save face. They had deliberately, intentionally planned to exclude me, and then constructed elaborate lies about my absence. "The trust fund situation," Victoria continued in a lower voice. "Yes, I spoke directly to the lawyer last week like you asked. Since she's been completely out of contact for so long, and since we have extensive documentation of her dropping out and severing all family ties, he's quite confident we should be able to legally claim her portion was forfeited due to abandonment. It'll take some time to work through the legal process, but he's very confident we can make it work in our favor." I felt like I had been physically punched in the stomach. My beloved grandmother had set up substantial trust funds for both Victoria and me before she died when I was 16. I had honestly never even thought about that money because I had been so intensely focused on simply surviving day to day. But apparently, my family had been thinking about it quite extensively. They had been actively planning to steal it. They weren't just taking social credit for my success that they knew nothing about. They were actively, deliberately trying to steal money that was legally and rightfully mine. Victoria actually laughed at something my mother said on the other end. "Don't worry at all, Mom. She made her choice when she dropped out and cut us off. She chose to throw her entire life away. That money is definitely better off with someone who actually did something productive with their education. Someone who actually made you and Dad proud instead of being a complete embarrassment." The words echoed painfully in my head. She chose to throw her life away. As if my severe mental breakdown had been a casual choice. As if their years of systematic emotional abuse and impossible standards had absolutely nothing to do with it. As if I had somehow wanted to struggle and suffer and fight desperately for every scrap of stability. I backed away from the door very carefully before Victoria could possibly see me or sense my presence. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone steady. But I had successfully recorded the entire devastating conversation. I had proof now. Concrete, undeniable proof of their lies, their manipulation, their calculated plans to steal from me. I walked back to the main reception hall in an absolute daze, my mind reeling. Everything I thought I understood about this evening had fundamentally shifted. This wasn't just about them being embarrassed by my college dropout status or wanting to maintain appearances. This was cold, calculated theft. This was about them rewriting our entire family history so they could steal my inheritance while maintaining their perfect public image. I needed advice from someone I trusted. I pulled up my phone and quickly texted Jordan, my business partner. He was the only person who knew the complete, unvarnished story of my past and what my family had done to me. The message was direct and urgent. Need legal help immediately. Family actively trying to steal my inheritance. Have clear recording of them admitting their plans. What should I do? His response came back quickly. Do not confront them yet. Leave the party now. Meet me at the office first thing tomorrow morning. Bring everything you have. We'll handle this properly and legally. He was absolutely right. I needed to be strategic and smart about this. But leaving right now felt genuinely impossible. I had come here specifically to face them. And I wasn't going to run away again like the scared 22-year-old girl they remembered. I steadied myself with several deep breaths and walked back into the heart of the elaborate party. The evening was clearly reaching its peak moment. My father was preparing to give what was obviously going to be an important speech, and everyone was gathering expectantly around a small stage that had been set up near the back of the elegant room. Positioned myself strategically near the edge of the crowd where I could see and hear everything clearly, but remain relatively inconspicuous and unnoticed. My father climbed confidently onto the small stage, microphone in hand. Wearing his most charming and practiced smile, the one I had seen him use countless times to close business deals. "Good evening, everyone," he began smoothly. "Thank you all so much for coming tonight to celebrate this truly momentous occasion. Today we honor my daughter Victoria, who has worked absolutely tirelessly to achieve her lifelong dream of becoming a physician." The crowd applauded enthusiastically. Victoria stood beside my mother, looking radiantly, perfectly happy. "As a father," my dad continued, his voice warm with emotion, "there's truly nothing more rewarding than watching your children succeed and thrive. My wife and I have been blessed beyond measure with two remarkable daughters, both exceptionally intelligent, both remarkably driven, both absolutely determined to make their mark on the world." I felt my jaw clench involuntarily. He was doing it again, right there in front of everyone. Pretending he was proud of me. Pretending we were one big, happy, supportive family. "Victoria has always been incredibly focused and dedicated to her goals," he went on. "Even as a young child, she knew with absolute certainty that she wanted to help people through medicine. She never wavered from that dream for even a moment. And tonight, as she celebrates her graduation from one of the finest medical schools in the entire country, we couldn't possibly be prouder of her." More enthusiastic applause rippled through the crowd. I noticed Professor Morrison standing in the audience, watching the speech with a pleasant, appreciative expression. Dr. Patterson stood nearby, nodding along approvingly. Our other daughter, Elena, couldn't be here with us tonight due to important work commitments overseas in London, my father said with perfect, practiced smoothness. But she sends all her love and heartfelt congratulations to her sister. Elena has built an extremely successful international design business and travels extensively throughout Europe for her high-profile work. We're enormously proud of both our girls and the remarkable women they've become. The absolute ease with which he delivered these complete lies was genuinely staggering. He told these falsehoods with such utter conviction that I almost believed them myself for a brief moment. "Family is everything," my father concluded, his voice thick with emotion. "And tonight we celebrate not just Victoria's incredible achievement, but the strength of family bonds that support us through all of life's challenges." "To Victoria! To Victoria!" The crowd echoed warmly, raising their champagne glasses. I didn't raise mine. I just stood there watching my father step down from the stage and embrace my sister tightly, watching my mother wipe happy tears from her eyes with a delicate handkerchief, watching everyone celebrate this perfect family moment that was built entirely on a foundation of lies and cruelty. Professor Morrison moved through the crowd and ended up standing near me again. "Lovely speech," he commented pleasantly. "Though I must say I'm surprised your sister couldn't make it tonight. I didn't realize you had a sibling until your father just mentioned it." I looked at him very carefully. He seemed genuinely confused, not trying to trap me or test me in any way. "That's interesting," I said slowly and deliberately, "because I am his other daughter." "I'm Elena." Professor Morrison's eyes widened in shock. He looked from me to my father across the room, then back to me, clearly trying to process this information. "I don't understand at all. He just said you were overseas in London." "He lied," I said simply and clearly. "I'm right here. I've been here all evening, walking around this party, and absolutely no one in my family has recognized me because they haven't actually seen me in 5 years. Not since they completely disowned me for dropping out of college." The professor stared at me, clearly processing this disturbing information. I could practically see his mind working, trying to connect pieces that didn't fit together at all. "But he just said he was proud of you," Professor Morrison said, clearly confused. "He said you have a successful business in Europe." "I do have a successful business," I confirmed. "But they don't know anything about it. They have absolutely no idea what I've been doing since they kicked me out with nothing. They've been making up elaborate stories about me to save face with all their friends and maintain their perfect family image. Professor Morrison looked genuinely shocked and disturbed. That's absolutely unconscionable. Why would they do something like that? Because they care far more about their social reputation than they ever cared about me, I said. The words came out bitter but completely true. Before Professor Morrison could respond, Dr. Patterson joined our conversation. Is everything all right here? He asked, clearly sensing the tension in our exchange. Professor Morrison looked at me, silently giving me the choice of whether to share what I had just revealed to him. I made a split-second decision. Dr. Patterson, I said clearly, I need to be completely honest with you about something before we move forward with any business discussions. He looked intrigued and attentive. Please go ahead. My full name is Elena Martinez. My last name is the same as Victoria's because she's my younger sister. I'm the daughter my father just mentioned in his speech, the one he claimed was working overseas in London. Dr. Patterson's friendly expression shifted to obvious confusion. I don't understand. You're standing right here. You're clearly not in London. Exactly, I said firmly. My father lied to everyone here. He's been systematically lying to everyone about me. The truth is that my parents completely disowned me 5 years ago when I dropped out of college due to severe mental health issues. They cut me off financially and emotionally, told me never to contact them again, and pretended I didn't exist, until recently apparently, when they decided to start telling people I'm successful and busy with important work overseas. They're using my real success, which they know absolutely nothing about, to make themselves look like supportive, proud parents. Dr. Patterson looked from me to the stage where my father was still basking in congratulations from well-wishers, then back to me with a troubled expression. This is a very serious accusation you're making. It's not an accusation, it's the documented truth, I said. I pulled out my phone. I have a recording from earlier tonight of my sister on the phone with my mother. In it, they explicitly discuss how relieved they are that I didn't find out about this party and show up. They also discuss in detail their plans to steal my inheritance by claiming I forfeited it when I dropped out and lost contact with the family. Professor Morrison's face had gone visibly pale. Elena, this is absolutely terrible. I had no idea you'd been through such an ordeal. Most people don't know, I said, because I've been completely focused on rebuilding my life and career rather than publicizing my family's dysfunction. But I came here tonight because I wanted to see them again, to face them as someone who had succeeded despite them, not because of them. What I didn't expect was to discover they've been lying about me for years and actively plotting to steal money that legally belongs to me. Dr. Patterson was quiet for a long, thoughtful moment, studying my face carefully. Can you prove you are who you say you are? I pulled out my driver's license and showed it to him. My name, my birth date, my Phoenix address, everything confirmed my identity conclusively. I believe you, he said finally, and I'm genuinely appalled by what you've shared with me. However, I need to think carefully about how to proceed with our business discussions. This puts me in an awkward professional position, as your father is a respected colleague, and I've known your family socially for several years. My heart sank predictably. Of course, my family's reputation would win out over my truth. It always did, but Professor Morrison spoke up firmly. With all due respect, Dr. Patterson, Elena's complicated family situation has absolutely nothing to do with her professional capabilities and qualifications. I taught her in college before she had to leave. Her work was exceptional then, and from everything she's told me, she's only improved dramatically since. Punishing her professionally because her family is severely dysfunctional would be grossly unfair. Dr. Patterson considered this carefully for a moment, then nodded slowly. You're absolutely right, of course. Personal family matters shouldn't affect legitimate professional opportunities. Elena, I'll be in touch next week exactly as we planned. What your family has done to you is between you and them. Your work speaks for itself. Relief washed over me, but it was extremely short-lived. I saw my mother heading directly in our direction, her face arranged in her practiced, welcoming smile. She was clearly bringing someone with her, probably to introduce them to the dean. Dean Patterson! my mother called out cheerfully as she approached our group. "I wanted to introduce you to some of our closest family friends." She stopped completely short when she reached us, her eyes finally landing directly on me. For one brief second, I saw a flicker of recognition cross her face, then confusion, then something that looked distinctly like panic. "Elena," she whispered, the color visibly draining from her carefully made-up face. "Hello, Mother," I said calmly. "Lovely party you've thrown? Though I notice I wasn't actually invited." My mother's mouth opened and closed several times without producing sound. She looked desperately at Dr. Patterson and Professor Morrison, clearly trying frantically to figure out how to salvage this situation. "What are you doing here?" she finally managed to ask, her voice tight and strained. "I was invited by an old friend," I said. "Though I've been here for well over an hour now, and this is the first time anyone in my so-called family has even recognized me." "Interesting, isn't it?" My mother's eyes darted around nervously. People nearby were definitely starting to notice the obvious tension in our exchange. "We should discuss this privately," she said urgently, reaching for my arm. I stepped back deliberately, avoiding her touch. "Why?" "You've been discussing me publicly all evening, telling everyone how incredibly proud you are of me, how successful I am, how I'm overseas working on my thriving international business. Might as well keep everything public now, don't you think?" "You don't understand the situation," my mother hissed, her pleasant facade cracking visibly. "We were trying to protect the family's reputation." "Protect the family?" I repeated loudly enough that several more people turned to stare. "Is that what you call completely disowning your daughter? Abandoning her when she was desperately struggling with her mental health? Kicking her out with absolutely nowhere to go? You made your choice when you dropped out of college," my mother said defensively, her voice rising. "You threw away everything we gave you, every advantage, every opportunity." "What you gave me?" I felt my carefully controlled anger rising to the surface. "You gave me constant criticism, endless comparisons to my perfect sister, and completely conditional love. And when I couldn't handle the pressure anymore, when I broke down, you threw me away like I was nothing, like I was garbage." My father appeared then, clearly drawn by the growing commotion. When he saw me standing there confronting my mother, his face went through the same rapid progression of emotions. Recognition, confusion, panic. "Elena," he said, his voice carefully controlled and measured, "this really isn't the appropriate time or place for this kind of discussion." "Really?" I shot back. "Because you seem to have plenty to say about me in your touching speech just now. All those elaborate lies about how proud you are, about my successful overseas business, about strong family bonds and unwavering support. Should we tell everyone here the real truth, Dad? Should we tell them you haven't spoken to me even once in 5 years? That you told me I was no longer your daughter and you never wanted to see me again?" People were definitely watching now. The conversations throughout the room had died down noticeably as guests turned to see what was happening. What was causing this disruption? I saw Victoria pushing urgently through the crowd, her face pale with alarm. "Elena, please," my father said, still trying desperately to maintain his composure. "You're making a scene and embarrassing yourself." "I'm making a scene?" I laughed bitterly. "You've been making up an entire fictional life for me for years. You've been systematically using my real success, which you know absolutely nothing about, to make yourselves look like supportive, loving parents. And now you're upset that I'm calling you out on it in front of your friends?" Victoria reached us, her eyes wide with shock. "What's going on here?" "Your sister decided to show up uninvited and create drama at your graduation party," my mother said sharply. "Just like her to try to ruin your special day and make everything about her problems." "Uninvited?" I turned to face Victoria directly. "That's a funny thing to mention. I actually overheard your phone conversation earlier this evening. The one where you told Mom how relieved you were that I didn't know about the party and wouldn't show up. The one where you and Mom discussed in detail your plans for stealing my inheritance from Grandma's trust fund." Victoria's face went completely white. "I don't know what you're talking about. You're making things up." I pulled out my phone and held it up. "I recorded the entire conversation. Would you like me to play it for everyone here right now?" Let them all hear you and Mom plotting to claim I forfeited my trust fund. Let them hear you laugh about how I supposedly threw my life away. You're insane, Cassandra spat. You always were unstable and overdramatic about everything. I was struggling with severe depression and anxiety, I corrected her coldly. I was desperate for help and support. And instead of helping me, you mocked me relentlessly. All of you did. You made me feel completely worthless until I actually believed it myself. Professor Morrison cleared his throat deliberately. I think everyone here needs to hear something important. I taught Elena in college. She was genuinely one of the most talented students I've ever had the privilege of teaching. When she left school, I was absolutely devastated because I knew she had incredible potential. But I also knew she was struggling with something much deeper than just academic stress. He looked directly at my parents. A good family, a loving family, would have helped her through that struggle with compassion. Instead, from everything I'm hearing tonight, you completely abandoned her when she needed you most. And now you're trying to take credit for her success while simultaneously trying to steal her rightful inheritance. That's not family. That's exploitation and abuse. My father's face had turned dark red with a mixture of anger and embarrassment. You have absolutely no right to judge our family decisions. You don't know the full story or context? Then please enlighten all of us, Dr. Patterson said quietly but firmly. Everyone turned to look at him. I'd very much like to hear your version of these events because right now what I'm hearing paints an extremely troubling picture of your character. The crowd around us had grown significantly larger. People were whispering to each other, and I noticed several phones were out. Some people were actually recording this confrontation. My parents' carefully maintained perfect image was crumbling in real time, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. My mother made one more desperate attempt to salvage the situation. Elena has always been troubled and mentally unstable. We tried absolutely everything to help her, spent thousands on therapists. But she refused all our support and help. When she dropped out, we were devastated. We gave her space, hoping desperately she'd come back to us eventually, but she completely disappeared. We've been searching for her for years. That's a complete lie, I said firmly and clearly. You told me explicitly never to contact you again. You changed all your phone numbers so I couldn't reach you. You made it crystal clear I was dead to you, that I was an embarrassment. I didn't disappear. You deliberately erased me from your lives. And the only reason you're upset now is because I showed up here and ruined the pretty fictional story you've been telling everyone. Jordan, my business partner, suddenly appeared at my elbow. I hadn't even realized he'd arrived at the venue, but seeing his familiar, supportive face brought me an immediate sense of relief and strength. He must have seen my location when I texted him earlier and decided to come support me. Everything okay here? Jordan asked, though his tone made it absolutely clear he knew it wasn't. Jordan, I said gratefully. These are my parents. Parents, this is Jordan Chen, my business partner. We run Elena Martinez design agency together. Perhaps you'd like to see that portfolio Dad supposedly keeps in his office and shows to clients. Oh, wait, you can't, because he doesn't actually have one. Because he has absolutely no idea what I've been doing for the past 5 years. Jordan pulled out his tablet and smoothly opened our agency's professional website. Elena Martinez Design Agency, he said clearly, turning the screen so everyone nearby could see. Founded 3 years ago. Currently employs 15 talented people. Annual revenue last year was just over $2 million. We have prestigious clients across the country, including several Fortune 500 companies. He swiped confidently through our portfolio, showing project after impressive project, sleek website designs, sophisticated brand identities, innovative marketing campaigns. All my work, all created without a single cent or ounce of support from my family. This is what Elena built after you threw her out, Jordan continued, his voice calm but absolutely cutting. She started with literally nothing. She slept on friends' couches for months. She worked 3 different jobs simultaneously while teaching herself advanced design skills using free online resources. She saved every single penny until she could afford her own tiny apartment. Then she freelanced relentlessly until she had enough clients to start an actual agency. She did all of this completely alone, and she's been incredibly successful, and you've been taking credit for it while plotting to steal from her." My mother stared at the tablet screen, her face completely unreadable. My father's jaw was clenched so tight I thought it might crack. Victoria looked like she'd been physically slapped. $2 million in revenue? My father said finally, and I could hear the unmistakable greed in his voice even through his shock. "That's revenue, not profit," Jordan clarified professionally. "But yes, the business is extremely successful and growing rapidly. Elena is one of the most sought-after designers in Phoenix, which makes it particularly galling that you've been taking credit for her success while actually trying to steal her inheritance." "We weren't stealing anything," my mother protested weakly. "We were simply claiming what was rightfully ours after she abandoned the family. I have a recording that explicitly says otherwise," I reminded her. "Victoria was very clear and specific on the phone about your plan to claim I forfeited my trust fund. I'm absolutely certain a judge would be very interested to hear that recording," Professor Morrison spoke up again firmly. "I think what's most disturbing here is the clear pattern of abusive behavior. You didn't just kick Elena out when she was vulnerable and struggling. You've spent 5 years systematically lying about her, cynically using her success to bolster your own reputation, and now attempting to commit fraud by stealing from her. This isn't a misunderstanding or a family disagreement. This is systematic abuse and financial fraud." Several people in the crowd nodded in agreement. I saw some of my parents' supposed friends looking at them with expressions ranging from confusion to obvious disgust. The carefully constructed perfect image was falling apart completely. Dr. Patterson addressed my parents directly and seriously. "I've known your family for several years. I've always respected you as colleagues and friends. But what I'm hearing tonight is deeply, profoundly troubling. If even half of what your daughter is saying is true, you've behaved absolutely abominably." "It's all completely true," I said firmly. "Every single word. And I can prove all of it. I have documentation of them cutting me off. I have the recording of Victoria discussing the trust fund theft. I have witnesses who can testify to my mental state when they abandoned me. I have 5 years of building a successful life completely separate from them with zero support or contact." My father tried one final time to regain control of the situation. "Elena, you're being vindictive and petty. Yes, we made some mistakes. Yes, things were said in anger that we regret. But we're still your family. We can work through all of this privately, like adults. Now you want privacy?" I asked incredulously. "After you publicly lied about me all evening long? After you gave that touching speech about family bonds and being proud of both your daughters? You don't get to choose when to be public and when to be private based solely on what's convenient for your image." Jordan leaned close to me and whispered quietly, "The lawyer is here. I called him after you texted me. He's waiting outside in the lobby." I nodded and turned back to face my parents one final time. "Here's exactly what's going to happen. Tomorrow morning, you're going to meet with my lawyer. You're going to provide complete documentation of the trust fund my grandmother left me. You're going to sign legal papers stating you have absolutely no claim to that money and will not attempt to interfere with my access to it. And you're going to do it quickly and quietly. And if we refuse," my father challenged, "then I go to every single person here tonight and tell them the complete, unvarnished story," I said clearly. "I play them the recording of Victoria. I provide them with documentation of everything you've done to me. I make absolutely sure everyone in your social circle, everyone you do business with, everyone who thinks you're upstanding citizens knows exactly what kind of people you really are. I'll systematically destroy the reputation you care about so much." My mother's face had gone from pale to flushed. "You wouldn't dare do that." "Try me," I said coldly. "I have absolutely nothing to lose. You already took everything from me once. I rebuilt my entire life without you. I don't need your money or your approval or your validation. But I'll be damned if I let you steal from me and continue pretending to be proud parents while doing it." Victoria finally found her voice again. "This is absolutely insane. You show up here after 5 years and threaten us like this?" "I didn't threaten you," I corrected. "I offered you a simple choice. Sign over what's rightfully and legally mine, or face the public consequences of your actions. It's really quite simple. Jordan checked his watch. The lawyer is waiting. Elena, we should go now. Let them think about their options overnight. I looked at my family one last time. My mother was crying now, careful, controlled tears that didn't ruin her expensive makeup. My father looked furious but trapped. Victoria just looked stunned. Her perfect graduation party had turned into a public spectacle and nightmare. Congratulations on your graduation, Victoria, I said. I genuinely hope it was everything you dreamed of. Then I turned and walked toward the exit with my head held high, Jordan beside me. Leaving my family standing in the middle of their horrified guests, the lawyer, Marcus Rivera, was waiting in the elegant lobby exactly as promised. He was in his mid-40s, sharp-eyed and extremely professional. Jordan had worked with him on several complex business contracts and trusted him completely. Elena, Marcus greeted me with a firm, professional handshake. Jordan filled me in on the basics. This is quite a situation you're dealing with. That's one way to put it, I said, still shaking from the intense confrontation. We moved to a quiet corner of the lobby where Marcus pulled out a legal pad and started taking detailed notes. I told him everything, the disowning 5 years ago, the systematic lies my family had been spreading, the overheard phone conversation about the trust fund, the recording I'd made. Do you have documentation of the trust fund itself? Marcus asked. I have copies of the original documents my grandmother's lawyer sent me years ago, I said. I never accessed the money because I wanted to prove I could make it completely on my own. But I kept all the paperwork in a safe place. Marcus nodded approvingly. Good. That'll help our case significantly. And you have this recording? I played it for him. Victoria's voice came through clearly, discussing with my mother how they planned to claim I'd forfeited the trust fund due to dropping out and losing contact. Marcus listened intently, making notes. When it finished, he looked up. This is excellent evidence of clear intent to defraud. Combined with their public lies tonight and witness testimony about their treatment of you, we have an extremely strong case. What happens now? I asked. Now we move quickly and decisively, Marcus said. Tomorrow morning, I'll send a formal letter to your parents demanding an immediate meeting. I'll outline exactly what we know and what we're prepared to do if they don't cooperate. Given that their reputation is clearly extremely important to them, and given that several respected people witnessed tonight's confrontation, I believe they'll agree to our terms. And the trust fund? Based on what you've told me, your grandmother's will had no conditions about education or maintaining contact with family. The money is yours regardless of whether you graduated college or stayed in touch with your parents. Any attempt to claim otherwise is fraud, plain and simple. They know this, which is why they were planning to do it quietly rather than going through proper legal channels. Relief washed over me. So I can actually get the money that's rightfully mine? You can and you will, Marcus confirmed. But Elena, I need to ask, what do you want beyond the money? Do you want to pursue criminal charges for the attempted fraud? Do you want to sue for emotional damages? Do you want to go completely public with their treatment of you? I considered this carefully. Part of me wanted to burn their lives to the ground the way they'd tried to burn mine, but another part of me just wanted to be completely free of them. I want my money, I said finally. I want them to sign legal documents stating they have no claim to it and will never contact me again. And I want them to stop lying about me. They don't get to use my success to make themselves look good anymore. Marcus nodded. That's reasonable and achievable. I'll draft the documents tonight and have them ready for tomorrow's meeting. Jordan put his hand on my shoulder supportively. You did good in there. I know that couldn't have been easy. It was terrifying, I admitted, but also absolutely necessary. I've been running from them for 5 years. Tonight, I finally stopped running. The meeting with my parents and their lawyer happened 3 days later in Marcus's downtown office. I sat beside Marcus on one side of the conference table. My parents, Victoria, and their attorney sat on the other side. The tension in the room was absolutely suffocating. Their lawyer, an older man named Donald Brennan, tried to take control of the meeting immediately. My clients are willing to discuss a reasonable settlement regarding the trust fund, but they want assurances that this matter will remain completely private. Marcus didn't even blink. Your clients attempted to defraud my client out of money that legally belongs to her. They have no leverage here whatsoever. We're not negotiating. We're informing them of what will happen. He slid copies of documents across the polished table. These are the terms. First, you will provide complete access to the trust fund established by Elena's grandmother. Second, you will sign a legal document stating you have no claim to that money now or ever. Third, you will cease all contact with Elena unless she initiates it. Fourth, you will immediately stop using her name, her success, or any reference to her in your social or professional circles. My father started to speak, but Marcus held up his hand firmly. I'm not finished. If you fail to comply with any of these terms, we will pursue criminal fraud charges. We will also provide copies of the recording and witness statements from the graduation party to your colleagues, friends, and business associates. The choice is entirely yours. Donald looked at the documents, then at my parents. My mother was crying again, real tears this time. My father looked defeated and trapped. Victoria stared at the table, refusing to meet my eyes. This is extortion, Donald said weakly. No, Marcus corrected firmly. This is justice. Your clients can sign these papers and move on with their lives, minus the money they tried to steal and the daughter they tried to exploit. Or they can refuse, and we'll make sure everyone knows exactly what they did. Their reputation will be destroyed, and they'll still lose the trust fund case in court. This way, at least they can maintain some dignity. There was a long, heavy silence. Finally, my father spoke. How much is in the trust fund? That's none of your concern anymore, Marcus said. But for the record, it's enough that Elena will be quite comfortable. More than comfortable, actually. My mother looked at me then, really looked at me for the first time. How can you do this to your own family? I met her gaze steadily. You stopped being my family 5 years ago when you threw me out. I'm just making sure you can't hurt me anymore. We made mistakes, she said desperately, but we're still your parents. Doesn't that mean anything? It used to, I said quietly. It used to mean everything to me, but you taught me that love is conditional, that I'm only worth caring about if I meet your impossible standards, that my pain and struggles don't matter if they're inconvenient for you. You taught me those lessons very well. Victoria finally spoke, her voice small. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said those things on the phone. You're not sorry you said them, I corrected. You're sorry I heard them and recorded them. There's a difference. Marcus tapped the documents. We need an answer. Sign or we proceed with public disclosure and legal action. Donald whispered something to my parents. They had a brief, heated discussion in low voices. Finally, my father picked up the pen. This isn't over, he said as he signed. Yes, it is, I replied. This is exactly as over as it gets. One by one, they signed the documents. My mother, my father, even Victoria. Each signature felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders. When it was done, Marcus collected the signed papers and made copies for everyone. You'll receive notification when the trust fund transfer is complete. I expect that will happen within the week. My parents stood to leave. My mother paused at the door, looking back at me one last time. I hope you'll be happy, she said, and for a moment she almost sounded sincere. I already am, I said. I have been for a while now. I just had to learn to find it without you. They left, and I sat there in the sudden quiet of the conference room. Marcus smiled at me. How do you feel? Free, I said simply. For the first time in my life, I feel completely free. The trust fund transfer was completed 5 days later. The amount was substantial, more than I'd expected. My grandmother had invested wisely, and the fund had grown significantly over the years. Combined with my business income, I was genuinely wealthy now. But the money wasn't what mattered most. What mattered was that I'd faced the people who had hurt me and refused to let them control my narrative anymore. I'd exposed their lies, protected my interests, and cut them out of my life permanently. The medical school contract came through the following week. Dr. Patterson made a point of telling me that the project was mine based purely on merit, not pity or drama. My agency's work spoke for itself. My parents never recovered their reputation in their social circle. Word spread quickly about what had happened at Victoria's graduation party. Their friends quietly distanced themselves, unwilling to associate with people who had treated their own daughter so cruelly. My father's business suffered as partners ended their relationships with him. My mother withdrew from her social clubs, unable to face the judgment. Victoria completed her medical degree but struggled to find a good residency placement. The recordings and witness statements had made their way through the medical community, and her ethics were questioned. She eventually moved to Seattle, trying to start fresh where no one knew her story. They had built their lives on appearances and reputation, and when those crumbled, they had nothing solid left to stand on. As for me, I stood in my expanded office space 6 months later, watching my team work on projects that would have seemed impossible just a year ago. The success felt real now, earned and unshakable. I'd learned that you don't need your family's approval to build a meaningful life. Sometimes the family you deserve is the one you create for yourself. And sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's simply becoming so successful, so happy, so free that their opinions no longer matter. I'd walked away from them at that graduation party, and I'd never looked back. That was the moment I truly won.